Good morning and welcome, everyone. This is a call to order for the Buncombe County Planning Board on November the 17th, 2025. And there are a few announcements this morning. We will have two opportunities for public comment today. First will be our general comment period for thoughts on any issue not being discussed in the zoning public comment period, and another comment period during the zoning hearing is reserved for only those addressing the zoning application being heard. And if you wish to speak during either of these public comment opportunities, please be sure you are signed up to speak on the sheets by the door and indicating the issue you wish to address. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. Also today, to ensure there are no conflicts of interest by board members on any of the issues we may vote on today, I'll review North Carolina Statute 160-D-109 regarding conflicts of interest for appointed boards. Members of appointed boards shall not vote on any advisory or legislative decision regarding a development regulation adopted pursuant to this chapter where the outcome of the matter being considered is reasonably likely to have a direct, substantial, and readily identifiable financial impact on the member. And appointed board members shall not vote on any zoning amendment if the landowner of the property subject to a rezoning petition or the applicant for a text amendment is a person with whom the member has a close familial, business, or other associational relationship. So is there anyone who feels like they have a possible conflict of interest this morning?
Nope.
Very good. Then we will move on. And I think next we will have staff announcements.
So I'm going to talk to you about the downzoning legislation that was passed by the General Assembly and how that's going to affect text amendments going forward. And then Kurt was supposed to talk about spot zoning, but he couldn't make it, and Amy's here, and Amy is not prepared to talk about spot zoning. Super exciting topic, spot zoning. So we will discuss that next time. In regards to the downzoning legislation, if you guys are not aware, the state in 2024 passed a downzoning regulation, and it contains a multitude of slightly unclear directions from the state regarding when you cannot make changes to your ordinance. What happens to non-conforming uses when you do make changes to your ordinance? And because the non-clarity of that state regulation, and also the fact that there are numerous bills to appeal that downzoning regulation, we have discussed with the county attorney, we discussed with the School of Government when staff was at the North Carolina American Planning Association conference, and we are going to start working on other text amendments that would not be considered downzoning. So stuff outside the zoning ordinance, such as we'll bring you flood in December. So we'll bring you some emergency related regulations. We'll bring you E911 addressing after that. And we are hoping in the course of that time, either the plethora of bills to undo that downzoning law go through, or it's challenged in the court and the court can give us a better definition of what downzoning is. It might come to, like, you're still going to talk about lighting today. It might come to us discussing text amendments and then stopping right before the public hearing and the vote, so they're ready to go. But really, as far as zoning law in North Carolina, when you're talking about downzoning, when you're talking about making stuff more restrictive, everybody's sort of waiting to see what happens. So we're going to do a little waiting to see what happens. And we will keep going through text amendments, but we will wait to see whether it gets challenged in court or some of those bills that are requesting some of those standards in that downzoning law get pushed back. Any questions?
No.
So if I'm hearing you right, there were a couple areas in the lighting ordinance which might
Yes.
cause concern in that area. So we're going to finish up our conversation so that everybody is heard and we get it where we want it to go, but we're going to pause on it being moved forward for a vote until you all come back and say, okay, here's what we'd suggest.
Yes.
Okay. Did you all get a sense of what else on sort of y'all's anticipated agenda is going to be impacted by that?
We haven't evaluated that yet, and it's really because the law is extremely unclear. And, does changing the size of your parking space, does that make it more restrictive? Does it apply to standards such as lighting? Or does it just apply if you're talking about uses and dimensional requirements? Like, nobody's really sure. The School of Government isn't sure, which is why we are waiting.
Did they give you any sense of the likelihood that they thought it was going to be challenged in court, or that any of the legislative mechanisms that have been introduced to repeal that
They
will
kind
move
of
forward?
described it as a ask if anything could happen in any order, or I don't know. There's so much uncertainty around it. The good news is that unlike some, like say Asheville, who's got all of their development ordinances kind of combined in what they call a UDO, the county has a code of ordinances. That means a lot of our development ordinances, to Jillian's point, are not contained within the zoning ordinance. So our flood standards, E911 addressing, erosion control, storm, they're all in different ordinances, not in the zoning ordinances specifically.
And they all have to be, a lot of them have to be updated and revised and modernized. So we have plenty of work for you to do until it gets figured out.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay. So we can now move on to the roll call of board members, and we'll begin at the end of the row on my right. If you'll just state your name as you go down the row.
John Noor here.
Earl Kuhn. Ken Khan.
Nancy Waldrop.
Tim Collins.
Liza Schillo.
Eric Robbins.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we need to approve the agenda. And do we need to make any correction to taking that off? No, because that wasn't on. Oh,
Name's Eileen Neville. Oh, okay. Is this working? Does this work? Oh.
Yeah.
Eileen Neville. I guess I'm filling in for Terry Rogers and Britton Sluter. So I'm happy to be here.
and we're glad to have you. Thank you. Very good. So we just need to approve the agenda, and we'll have a motion.
So move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved, and we also need to approve the minutes of October 20th, 2025. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. And now we can open our general public comment for anyone who wishes to speak. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak in our general public comment? This would be addressing anything that's not part of the zoning issue. Lighting would be addressed at this moment, I think. And if you could just state your name and the general area of the county where you live. And we do have 3 minutes, and let's see if there's anything else I need to say. Since we only have one person speaking, that's probably all I need to tell people about this morning. We do limit it to 3 minutes. You can only speak once at a regular meeting of the board. The board is not expected to comment on matters brought up during public comment. And I think that will suffice.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Bernard Argier. I've spoken here at the last two planning meetings, and the reason I'm here is over 13 years ago, I was on the, is that on? All right, over 13 years ago, I was on the planning team with the county supervisors that implemented the first and only lighting ordinance, the one that's being proposed to be revised. So there are some things in the current ordinance, and I'll have to admit, I didn't see this second draft till just a few minutes ago, and I haven't read it. Some of what I'm saying may be in that draft, but I don't know yet. And I'm not going to try and look at it right now. Couple items I wanted to mention on prohibitions. I series in section D, I think you need to mention floodlights because by definition, they're not even partial cutoff. They're tipped up. They're not a cutoff fixture. And then section E 1A, maximum foot candles. That allowance is a broad single 3.0. And that's really broad because in some areas you're going to want less. The Illuminating Engineering Society says 0.05, I mean 0.5 to 3.4. And they do that intentionally because in residential neighborhoods you want less. No one wants 3 foot candles right outside their bedroom window on a street, but they do want a street light. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying no street lights, but they don't want one that bright. So I think you need to have a little bit of a range there. City of Asheville does. And then the section on Kelvin temperatures, Kelvin ratings, section E1B, table 10. Important to remember, Kelvin ratings don't affect the brightness of the light. They affect the brightness is determined by the lumens, and lumen ratings are important. But the Kelvin ratings determine how glaring the light is. Many of you have seen the City of Asheville lights. You get underneath them, you got to look away. You're going to lose your night vision. So it's good to follow what other cities are doing, and there are a whole list of them I can provide. City of Pittsburgh, not a single street light is above 2,700 Kelvin because the AMA and many other organizations are not supporting that kind of a glaring light. It's not healthy as well to have that kind of lighting. But the exception should be sports fields, performance areas. You need a different type of daylight lighting effect. So I think those would be the general exceptions. Noticeably missing from the table, though, is street lighting. Most of our lights are street lights. Why don't they have a Kelvin restriction? City of Pittsburgh restricts all street lights to 2,700. 3,000 is acceptable, but they went below that. And then in another section, the mounted exterior light fixture height, section E3. And I'm going to give you a handout of these comments with more detail. So, because I only have 3 minutes, I think here you need to distinguish the difference between parking lot and street lighting. In residential areas, parking lot lights, yes, they should be 25 feet tall. That's very common. But in residential neighborhoods, your street lighting isn't typically 25 feet. It's usually closer to 15 feet. Again, because then it comes down into all the bedroom windows and you're going to get complaints from the neighborhood folks. Vehicular canopies, I think that 30-foot candle standard that you've written up, it's 10-foot candles higher than Asheville, which uses 20. And 20 is really bright. Get underneath an Asheville vehicular canopy, you can do open heart surgery under 20-foot candles. So you don't need 10 more. The reason they do it, the gas stations know the brighter the light, just like insects, the people come in more. It's an attraction thing. I have some articles I can share from papers that do the same, that tell you why they want so many foot candles. You don't need 30-foot candles to be safe. 20 is a lot of foot candles. And then lastly, dusted on security lights and floodlights. They're put together in section E7, but floodlights really don't belong there because by definition, they can't be full cutoff. And you talk about floodlights need to be full cutoff, but if they're full cutoff, they're no longer a floodlight. So you probably need to just get rid of the whole idea of a floodlight. And then it's also, like I said before, because a lot of homeowners buy these dusk to dawn lights at Lowe's, Home Depot. Think about lumens and not foot candles for these folks. None of them have a foot candle meter or even want to get one. They're going to see lumens on the package, not foot candles. So that's something to think about. And of course, the other thing which affects all this legal stuff you just talked about, with the state assembly is compliance and bringing non-compliant fixtures into compliance over what time period. Some people just say when you replace the bulb, others will give you a time period to phase it in. That needs to be addressed somewhere in there. And it looks like from the quick look I had at your changes that you're trying to get to something like that. So that's it for my 3 minutes, and I appreciate you taking time to listen to me. I'll give staff and you these hard copies I brought. And now wrap up.
Who's doing the shit? Yeah, let me say something.
And thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. You're going in the right direction with this. Don't get me wrong. Don't take these criticisms saying I don't like it. I think it's very well done. So thank you.
Bernard, are you going to be here through the session or are you
Yeah, I'm
leaving?
going to sit through the session.
Try to catch me before we leave. I want to talk about Woodfin.
Okay, about Woodfin. Oh, yeah, Woodfin's not as good as yours right now. And you probably know that.
Okay. Any other public comment this morning? And if not, we will close the public comment period and we will move on to our zoning issue. And I'll open the public hearing for ZPH 2025-00036, Rogers rezoning. And I think Ms. Mathis is going to do this for us. We'll have the staff presentation and then the applicant presentation.
Didn't work.
I have to present it first. It won't let me present once I start sharing, and it also won't let me share once I'm presenting. So let me see what I can do about that. Is it normal that it won't let me like start presenting in? Okay, never mind. It just let me. I got it. Okay, sorry about that. This is the review of ZPH 2025-00036, the Rogers Map Amendment. This hearing was properly noticed and all applicable parties notified of the meeting in accordance with general statutes and county code. That included a legal ad in the local newspaper, notices mailed to property owners within 1,000 feet, a notice on the county's website, and a physical posting on the site. The applicants and owners are Ricky and Rebecca Rogers. The addresses are 4 Dry Ferry Road, an unaddressed parcel on Ferry Road, and 80 Ferry Road. The area to be rezoned is 3 parcels totaling 13.4 acres. The current uses are residential low density and residential building lot. On the application, they plan to hook up to public water and sewer, but they, I think, are currently on septic from what I can see on the GIS. The application is to rezone from R1 residential to R3 residential. You can see the current zoning map on the left side of the screen and the proposed rezoning on the right side. This parcel is located in an area identified by the Buncombe County Comprehensive Plan's future land use map as mixed-use neighborhood, which does align with the R3 zoning district. This chart compares the dimensional standards of the zoning districts. If the rezoning request is approved, the density would increase slightly. The minimum allowed lot size would decrease if served by sewer. The required setbacks in the property lines would remain the same, and the maximum allowed height of the structures would also remain the same. Oops. The types of uses allowed on the property would increase slightly. They're both residential districts, R1 and R3. R1 is a zoning district that is lower intensity residential. R3 would allow things like bed and breakfast, clubs or lodges, kindergartens with more than 8 children, group homes, healthcare facilities, multifamily residential, rooming houses, and that's kind of about it. The surrounding developments include manufactured home park, self-storage, used car sales, residential low density, the future Ferry Road project, which is actually in the city of Asheville, that big pink parcel, and some undeveloped commercial parcels. This rezoning request has been found to be consistent with a number of county plan recommendations, including the future land use map category, the proximity to sewer and water, the density. The proposed rezoning does allow for a transition between the higher intensity uses and lower intensity uses. It is proximate to transportation corridor and avoids overlay districts, floodplain, and is proximate to commercial areas. Based on this, the staff recommends approval. And does board have questions?
Any questions?
I had a couple. Is there any assessment or will this trigger a traffic impact assessment or anything like that?
So this is the rezoning. So we don't look at any specific projects. It's just, so we don't know what they would be doing with the land. The idea is to think of like, what would be the most intense thing that they could do with the land and then kind of go from there. And so that list that I kind of rattled off, that would change, like, okay, thinking about bed and breakfasts or clubs or lodges, kindergartens with more than 8 children, group homes, healthcare facilities, multifamily residential, rooming houses. So those are the types of uses that could be in R3 that are not found in R1. Mm-hmm. So depending on what they decide to do, if it was like a big enough project through a planned unit development, they would require a traffic assessment. But at this time, there's no specific project being proposed, so we wouldn't do that.
Is that the same for stormwater?
Yeah.
Okay.
No development projects being proposed. So we're not going to go through any of those development processes right now or reviews. But they could in the future.
Anything else?
I guess just a clarifying question on what you were saying, and it's in part because we can't look at a specific project as part of a rezoning. We're prohibited from doing that. We need to look at it from all the possibilities to make sure that it makes sense no matter what might be brought forward within an R3 context. Is that right?
Right. Like the highest one is mostly the one you would use. They could rezone it, sell it tomorrow. Their project goes out the window. So we don't look at specific projects. That's right.
Okay. So if there are no other questions, we're ready for the applicant, or is?
Sure.
And while the applicant's making their way up, just a reminder to the board, because a lot of folks get confused with other municipalities, including the city of Asheville. They have a process called conditional zoning, which they are allowed to look at both a rezoning application and a project-specific site plan kind of at the same time. County does not have that process, and we are also not dissimilar from many other communities. What we do have is a process that allows you all as a legislative board to entertain the rezoning request. It goes on to the commissioners. And then if you'd like, I would invite you over to the Board of Adjustment. We just had a 4-hour meeting the other day, and that's where you can get into the nuts and bolts of reviewing the development itself. And they are a quasi-judicial board. So that's the avenue for that.
Good morning. My name is Vince Rogers. I'm speaking on behalf of my father, Ricky Rogers, and Rebecca Rogers, my mother. we're just, we've acquired these properties. There's 3 separate parcels like she was explaining. And they're just, I feel like the community with the housing shortage like it is, feels like there needs to be more density. So that's why we've tried to approve from R1 to R3. And then also it just seems to just be in a good location with all the septic and sewer hookups. So we just felt like it would benefit the community and affordable housing. It's kind of where we're leaning, but we're not 100% sure where we're going to go with the project, I guess you say. But since all those kind of align with our thinking, since it has 3 parcels, possibly just resurvey them to 1 parcel and then go from there. So that's kind of our plan.
Thank you. And have you had any feedback from the community about?
That's why we came here, just to kind of course, present it to y'all and to see if there's any kind of pushback or whatnot. But there's been a lot of people that know us in the area, and they've just asked what we're planning on doing. So we're not sure really what we're doing. We're just here we are. This is our first go at it.
I would expect you wouldn't hear much from the community until you had a specific plan
Sure.
in place.
Well, like I said, we're just trying to get zoned first step, I guess. And then if you have any recommendations, what would go well there? Because I know you have a big project right across the street. So, we're open to ideas. But that's kind of where we're at. And I'm not sure. You want to add? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your being here. Any other questions? Then, if we are ready to make a decision, just for the public's benefit, I'd like to read our basis for making a decision. The board must determine if there is a reasonable basis for the requested change in the light of its effect on all involved, including the following considerations. The requested change does not directly or indirectly result in the creation of spot zoning, which this does not. Size of the tract in question, compatibility of the change with the adopted 2043 comprehensive plan, benefits and detriments resulting from the change for the owner of the newly zoned property, their neighbors, and the surrounding community, relationships between the uses envisioned under the new zoning and the uses currently present in the adjacent tracts. And then we have the option of either approving this as it is consistent with the Buncombe County 2043 comprehensive plan as presented. We can recommend approval of a portion of the proposed rezoning as it is consistent with the Buncombe County 2043 comprehensive plan, or we can recommend denial of the proposed rezoning as presented as it is not consistent, or as it is inconsistent with the Buncombe County 2043 comprehensive plan. If I got all that out right, understandably. Thank you. But that's our choices. So where would we like to go?
Well,
So-
we need to open a public hearing and then close.
Oh, yes, thank you. We do need to do that. Totally forgetting that. Yes, a public hearing. So is there anyone here who would like to speak to this issue? Dee Dee?
My name is Dee Dee Stiles, and I live in Swananoa. One of the things I noticed when staff was presenting the facts about this zoning is, and this is maybe not particularly about this one, but about that presentation, there was no place where they said, what is the slope of the property? So it's hard to tell whether that's going to be a place where there'll be a runoff to the neighbors if something is developed there. I would like to see that included in future presentations of rezoning, is what is the general slope of the property and which direction does it drain?
Madam Chair, I would make a motion, because I know we'll have discussion after a motion is made, but I would make a motion to approve the proposal and find that it is consistent with the comprehensive plan. And then I have comment once we reach the discussion point.
Okay.
Second.
Do I need to close the public hearing first before we do that? Yes, I do. Okay. So is there anybody, thank you for that, and we will do it. Is there anybody else who would like to speak to this issue before we move on? Then if not, I will close the public hearing. And now we can entertain the motion and have a discussion as we. see
It was
fit.
a second too. I heard one over there.
Make the
Yes.
same motion again.
Second, yeah.
Any further discussion?
Just discussion point on the motion. So I think the proposal makes a lot of sense in light of its location along Brevard Road, which is a transportation corridor that I think would be more than adequate to handle any traffic that's going to come from the kinds of uses that we would generally anticipate with R3 zoning. It's immediately across the road from what will be, I think, a major multifamily type housing project that's within the city of Asheville's boundaries and was on property owned by the county, I think. So, yeah, the pink up there. I also like that the R3 zoning includes manufactured housing as an option, both as right and conditionally, and that adjoins existing manufactured housing, which is the largest source of affordable housing in the county and in the country. So I think it gives a lot of different options depending on what any future or current property owner might like to do with the property. In general, didn't have any other concerns about the proposed application.
Any other thoughts?
Would you be willing to amend that motion to state that the comprehensive plan that we're abiding by the growth, equity, and conservation? Just to be clear, as opposed to just it meets the comprehensive plan.
I'd be happy to include those specifics in addition to the overall plan. If there's a second.
All right, then we have a motion. Ready to vote? And so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Then the motion passes. Very good. Yes, congratulations. And this does go before the commissioners after it's been.
Yeah, I'll email you when I can get a date for the commissioner meeting. Yeah. Okay, yeah, no problem.
Yes, thank you for being here today. All right, so now we can continue with our review of ZPH 2025-00024, which is the lighting text amendment.
Before Shannon gets started, I just want to make a couple of general notes. This is not a new lighting ordinance. We've had a lighting ordinance for many years. This is an attempt to sort of bring you what's working, what's not working, what needs to be revised. I'd also like to remind the board that we are not in a city. Buncombe County is 667 square miles, and we have many, many rural areas. So it's not as easy sometimes from a regulatory perspective, which is why we have differences in the ordinance opposed or compared to more of our urban counterparts. And if you think about the numerous farms we have with folks trying to go out there and tend to cows at 4 a.m., you can see why we have differences. So we also have differences in things like, we don't have a tall grass ordinance. How do you in such a rural area? So just a couple of things to keep in mind and things that we've learned that are pain points over the years that we're trying to bring you to make it easier on staff and to bring us more clarity as we work with businesses and development every day. Go ahead, Shannon.
Thanks. Okay, so you have an updated copy that has some areas highlighted in green that we need to continue looking at based on feedback from our last couple meetings. A few things that we need to do some more research on to fill in, but I believe that we had left off at number 2, luminaire type as our stopping point at the last meeting, if that sounds right to everybody. So we can just start from there and begin to move through what are the same edits that you had last time. Nothing's been changed since our last meeting. So we'll begin at luminaire type. If everyone wants to take a minute to read through those, and I'm going to make my screen a little bit bigger. Let's see. So in this section, we're adding a graphic that had not been in there before to try to visualize some of those cutoff differences.
Can I ask a general question? Because I feel like it's come up a couple times and I want to make sure I've got clarity on it. Where do floodlights fit under the regulation in general? So folks can have an appreciation of where that might plug in.
Okay, so one thing to keep in mind is that this lighting ordinance does not regulate single-family residential properties. So we are only talking about commercial development, industrial, multifamily apartments, which would have like common open space and commercial parking lots as part of their development. And floodlights are mentioned in a couple places in the ordinance. The dusk to dawn security lights that we talked about last time, those have been phased out. Those were a very specific type of fixture. So that is different than like a normal floodlight you might see on the back door of a industrial building or something like that. In terms of how we would be regulating those, at the moment, the proposal is that they would have to be cut off lights. So they couldn't be pointing straight out or up. They'd have to be at an angle that would meet that cutoff requirement as shown in the new visual or the new graphic. And they would be allowed under section 7, dusk to dawn utility security lights. Currently, they are permitted. The proposal would be to have motion activation as a new requirement so that they're not just on all the time. And some allowance for the zoning administrator to kind of tweak that if there are some specific safety issues on like a particular use. So I think we are going to get to that on the next page, and we can talk about it in detail. But at the moment, they are permitted, trying to add some additional requirements to make them a little bit less obnoxious for the surrounding uses.
Thanks.
Any other questions about that first section? We are asking also to require some shielding to those types of lights, not to the floodlights, to the lights in this section, so that we are clarifying that if you have lighting, you need to be aiming it onto your property and not aiming it into a neighboring property.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yes.
So in my day job, I get paid to look at exceptions and find them in
Mhm.
order to find holes. So one of the questions I'd have, when you say we're not regulating single-family residential, you're getting that from the exemption C1 section.
Yes.
So it's lighting for single-family residential structures, with the exception of dusk to dawn utility/security lights, which shall be regulated pursuant to Section E. So that's where you're saying we're not regulating.
Yes.
When we say residential structures here, let's say we had a home on the front of a property, but we had either large, I won't say barn, but let's say like an industrial warehouse or kind of back further on a larger tract or something like that. Are
Mhm.
we getting at that? What we're trying to get at here is the structure not being residential, not the zoning of the underlying tract.
It
Correct?
has nothing to do with the zoning. We're looking at, they would come in for a development application and we're looking at the land use. So you might have a property that has a residential home on it, and we're not gonna look at ask you for a lighting plan for that home. But if you decide, you want to move your auto repair shop, you're out in open use, you can kind of do whatever you want. You're going to build a big commercial building in your backyard. We're going to want a lighting plan for that commercial portion. We're not going to then suck in your single family home and start asking for, what's your porch light?
Yep.
That kind of stuff.
Perfect.
It's
Thanks.
just for that use. Okay. We move on to section 3, height. So just a reminder from last time, a lot of these requirements were pre-existing in the ordinance, but they were kind of spread out in different sections, and we have consolidated everything into a table. So all the heights are in one location, and have added some new ones such as the electronic message displays, and then clarified some about those individual apartment balconies. But most of these other heights were already in there. or we've broken them out a little bit different.
The maximum mounted height is at the top of the sign or the bottom of the sign?
So these are for, typically they're going to be for a light fixture onto either a pole light. It
Okay.
could be mounted height on a structure, like a wall pack up on the front of a building. It
The
could
maximum
also be
height,
for a
gotcha.
lit sign. Mhm.
The comment we received was about the parking lot and street lighting, and I guess I wanted to ask the sort of the background and thinking between differentiating between the dusk to dawn security and floodlight maximum being 15 feet
Mhm.
and the parking light and street lighting being 37 feet.
So the parking lot and street lighting is going to be full cutoff lights. Just because normally the lumens of those types of lights are not low enough to allow them to be a partial cutoff. So 99% of the time, because the lumens of those types of lights exceed that 1250 lumen cutoff, they're going to have to be full cutoff. Whereas the security and flood lighting, if they keep their lumens low enough, they could, in theory, be more of that partial cutoff that does tend to spread light more to adjacent properties and has the potential for more light trespass. So a lower maximum height kind of helps to offset that difference. That doesn't mean that we couldn't look at a different standard for the street lighting. We did speak to Duke Energy about the parking lots, and one of the challenges that they have is that in certain types of parking lots, they have to elevate their pole lights on kind of concrete piers to protect those the poles from cars. So they wanted us to be aware of the fact that that will add some height to the pole, even if it's a 25-foot pole. You know, it's going to add another anywhere from 4 to 5 feet or whatever it may be to protect it. So just something to keep in mind about the parking lot lighting.
So conceivably, we could split off street lighting from that grouping with its own standard, but your recommendation would be keep parking lot lighting at 37.
37 gives them a lot of wiggle room for some kind of non-standard options if they get into a situation where they need the extra height. But the street lighting wasn't really one of the concerns in terms of having to elevate it.
Gotcha. So Duke didn't have a concern with that.
And keep in mind too, again, this is an area where we don't have a lot of street lighting is not universal. Whereas in cities, it's generally part of the deal. You get water, you get sewer, you get street lighting, you get urban amenities, things like that. But in the county, you might have a neighborhood that's got like one random person decides to get with Duke to have one light installed. Now Duke's been very good to work with in terms of providing full cutoff fixtures now. But to Shannon's point, this gives staff the flexibility. You might have a higher end subdivision. Yeah, they're going to put in street lightings. They're going to put in fancy, but they do come in different forms. And Duke oftentimes in an existing neighborhood might utilize an existing utility pole to just put a typical light on it.
And the higher the height that's permitted, the less lighting fixtures they need because that light will spread further. So they can typically still achieve the amount of lighting that they need, but they would have to install more poles to do it. So it's kind of a cost consideration too.
You're measuring this, it says from the lowest adjacent grade. How far out from the pole is an adjacent?
We look at pretty much where it's mounted to the ground.
So it's really not adjacent grade. It's whatever the height is at the pole.
That is typically what we do. If we get into a situation where there's, it's in like a weird spot and we have to look at that the way that is currently worded gives us some wiggle room. Like if it's down in a depression or if it's, in some other weird place where it's impacting the ability of that light to light the area it needs to, the zoning administrator can look at that adjacent grade wording and determine if they can, give them some flexibility without having impacts beyond what we would want to see. But most of the time when we get a lighting plan in, that light is in kind of just a normal spot and we don't have to really dig into the adjacent grade very much. John, did you have a thought about what you would want to see for a separated street lighting maximum mounted height?
Yeah, I was kind of hoping that maybe others would comment on their thoughts on it. It does seem like having street lighting 37 feet in the air, while possible, seems like a lot.
Yes.
And so something, I know 15 had been thrown out by the member of the public who spoke. I don't know that it needs to be that low because I think that's too low considering some of the telephone poles that they use it for. So I feel like something in between that's based on an informed decision, considering you've looked so much at it, Shannon, it seems like maybe that's something that could be popped in, considering we're not going to move it forward for a little while.
Okay.
Maybe it's 2025, something like that. But somewhere in between.
Okay.
25, I think is doable. 37, we definitely need a lot more flexibility in the parking lots, for sure.
Yeah.
Totally. I
Yeah,
think
that's-
parking lot sounds like it makes a lot of sense at 37. This would just be splitting off street lighting to a new category with its own number.
We need 25 on the street.
Okay.
That sound good to everyone?
Mhm.
Maxed out at 25 for streetlights.
That's what we're thinking.
Most of them choose to do, I think 18 is the standard. If you ever see like the kind of the decorative lantern style
Mhm.
pole lights for the streets, those are usually around 18 feet.
And even on a pole, an electricity pole, I mean, really what we're talking about is where on that pole they're putting it out
Mhm.
versus the size of the pole as a whole.
And it depends, and that gives us flexibility because you might have a number of different transformers and different connections where you might not have the room. So you're just looking for a band to wrap it around and then connect it.
Any other questions about that height table? Okay, we can move on to what looks like it is the wrong number on here. It should be 4, accent and facade lighting. And we did at the beginning add new definitions for what those two things mean, why they're different.
What page is this?
This is, oh, we don't have page.
Right under the, right under the table.
Accent lighting.
Okay, that's not it. Thank you.
Is this the point at which we discuss lighting a flag?
Now that's lighting of the flag is US flag code. So there's federal protections there. That's absolutely something that's allowable, and we are not going to propose any regulation for lighting a flag since that's covered under the US flag code.
Just a question on that. On board with not touching how we light up the US flag, but there are lots of different flags. Let's say we have the Happy Holidays flag. Where does that get covered?
Do we,
Let's get back to you on that. I
Okay.
don't want to open up a can of worms here. Say someone takes down the US flag and raises a Happy Holidays flag. You see the concern I would have there.
We talked a little bit last week too. Like we don't want to touch the season's greeting signage. We don't want to get in this. I want to make sure we're not like touching it in another way. You may have been thinking that I wanted to regulate it, but I want to make sure it doesn't fall into another bucket inadvertently.
Been there, done that. Brings back a horror story from Florida for me. So we're gonna get back to you on flags. Okay.
Sounds like a Florida thing.
Oh, yeah.
So as I'm reading section A, we're definitely telling people, architects, they may not light their facade from the ground.
correct. And it had been a requirement before, as you see, we crossed out rather than shall be directed downward rather than upward was the original language. We're just kind of tweaking that a little bit just to clarify that that means that it shall be a full cutoff fixture, or if it's fully shielded and directly facing the building, they can do something that's not full cutoff.
And keep in mind, you can downwash. What we're saying is you can't upwash now, and we never allowed the upwash, but the downwash has the exact same effect from an aesthetic standpoint. It's just less obtrusive to someone that's like viewing a building or negative light trespass out.
Is there anywhere in here, because I'm not sure if we talked about this, but we did, where does landscape lighting fall in this?
That would be part of this section, especially if you were doing like uplighting of trees, things like that. The way that the ordinance is currently written and the way that we're proposing to kind of clarify some of the language would be that you have to do downlighting.
Where in the world would, say, a lighting designer like myself that likes landscapes all the time, where would I be alerted to the fact that I'm falling under this ordinance?
So when we get a development permit in, we ask for a commercial lighting plan. We ask if there's landscaping lighting, you know, wall packs. And then we put a condition on their approval that says that our zoning inspector will be going out prior to CO and doing the lighting inspection, and that all the lights that are going to be on the property need to be in place. So that's really our only opportunity to alert them to the fact that we regulate exterior lighting. If they come in, you know, if they get all their permits and they do all this and then they come back in and do unpermitted lighting of all their landscaping, we would have to wait for a complaint from a neighbor to know if that was occurring.
To Jay's question, in this context, and forgive me, Jay, I don't know if you do mostly commercial or residential or both. But in a context where we had let's say a single family residential, would you all consider that type of lighting to be related to the structure, or would you see that as detached from an uplighting standpoint?
We don't regulate the single family properties. If they wanted to uplight their trees in their front yard, we would not have anything to do with that. But if they built that commercial warehouse in the backyard and wanted to light up the whole site, they'd have to do a commercial lighting plan.
And that's what so if it's related to the residential, the uplighting is going to be allowed. If it's related to some other type of use that is not single family residential, then they're going to fall in this.
Yes.
Taking tools out of my toolbox.
What would you like to propose?
Well, I'm not sure that anything it's typical to uplight trees.
Yes.
And now you're telling me in a commercial situation, you cannot uplight trees.
Yeah. Currently, if we received an application for that, we would tell them they needed to revise it and do some type of downlighting off of an adjacent building or.
Well, we can climb up in the tree and hang them.
Yeah.
Or cover them with little lights and dark range.
Sounds like maybe you're getting more ladders.
How does the city of Asheville address that?
So that's the deal. The general theory is downlighting's okay. Uplighting is what creates the effect that many that want to enjoy the night sky are seeking. So the city, again, is going to be far more restrictive. And I don't know how many tweaks they've made since I've worked there, since I've been gone there over 10 years, but I'm sure there's someone in the room that can probably tell you. But the general rule of thumb with any kind of dark skies or dark skies adjacent type ordinance is downlight's good, uplight's bad.
Any more questions? Do we want to move on to vehicular canopies?
So.
I guess the only other comment I would have is low wattage and include shields to minimize reflection seems rather vague.
Yeah, let's are you talking about where it says like yeah.
So the first part of that we crossed out, that's the original ordinance. Our staff felt it was confusing. We've tried to rewrite it in that second sentence to clarify. If there's a better way to do that, that would be great. This is not proposing any new requirements. We're trying to clarify that wording. So if there's a better way to do it, let's try to do that.
What we might could do is just get rid of that very last sentence. Because I think that's getting into something that would be very, very difficult to enforce. Carl, is your building polished enough? Or Jay, is your glass exterior surface shiny? Well, all glass is shiny. So I think we need to work on that section a little more.
Yeah, that's like if somebody wants to build a 45-story
I get it.
marble all over it.
Yeah, that's shiny. Let's work on that. a little
Not that
bit.
they're gonna do that in the county, but
Okay. All right. Section, what are we on now?
Now, five.
That'll be 5. Yep. So B is the first change. So at the last meeting, we had talked a little bit about these canopies and how difficult it is to bring them into compliance when they are replacing portions of lighting, but not redoing the development site as a whole. One of the ways that our staff had talked about maybe meeting in the middle where they can update their lighting as it ages without having to do a full-blown redesign of the whole site would be to only allow them to replace one side of that canopy. So we know that it's going to be bringing down the overall light level, but we're not making them tear out every single light on the entire property, if that makes sense.
It does, although aesthetically that might be less desirable. To
It's
have
an-
unbalanced look like.
Yeah, it's an option. They could choose to bring the site into compliance, or this is another option that we would be giving them saying,
You don't have to.
saying basically this would allow you to bring down your non-compliance for the light levels, but now you're going to lose, you could still have the signage, but you're only going to be able to have lighting on one side of that canopy. So they would have to choose, do we want to replace all the lights to now bring the site into compliance, or do we want to reduce our light levels and only have one, maybe just the road side is lit and the other sides would just be unlit signage?
Question came up about the 30 light foot candles. And I know you spoke at the last meeting about sort of differences in why we use foot candles versus lumens.
Where are you seeing 30?
Right
right at
A.
the top.
Under
And-
Oh,
5A.
Yeah,
And that's the
Okay.
current standard.
that's the current standard.
And
And so a couple questions is one, so I can contextualize, I guess I could look it up myself. So I apologize for not having done it, but what's the equivalency of 30-foot candles to lumens?
I like to think of it as like drawing clouds on the site plan. So the foot candle is going to be that overall sort of reach and kind of the intensity. Whereas when someone goes to Home Depot or whatever and picks up a lighting fixture, you might have a lumen written on the box.
Yeah, the lumens is what's exiting. Foot candles is what you would measure at a particular spot around it.
so a sports field where it's like the middle of the day at night is 60.
Okay.
So this is quite high. So that, I mean, any section that you would want to look at was open for discussion.
And again, we're dealing with things into the future, not existing, unless someone has a
Yes.
special type modification to their existing.
Yep.
Situation.
This is new development going forward, or if they were redeveloping the site or replacing the fixtures, then they would be subject to the new standards.
And did we decide, I mean, I was looking back and it looks like the 5,000 degrees Kelvin for vehicular gas station canopies is still there. We had talked about lowering that as well. So I guess, how should we be thinking about 30-foot candles, 5,000 degrees Kelvin? I remember there was concern from the staff about enforcing with the vehicular canopies, so.
So the Kelvin is the color temperature, and the higher that number, the more impacts to people. 3,000 is kind of where everyone is heading in terms of like health and safety. 4,000 is very close to what the maximum is currently in our ordinance. I think we had talked about the gas station canopies going to 4 at the last meeting. That just needs to be updated. But were there questions still about it being at the 4,000 Kelvin limit?
That's what I thought we talked about at the last one, just being 4,000 Kelvin, but
Okay.
The information that I've seen recommends that you between 4 and 5,000 for color rendering, especially for TV monitors, cameras, security cameras.
As you get closer to 4,000 or 5,000, it's more neutral. And so it's better for distinguishing between colors. That's why car dealerships like to have that daylight, that more like 5,000, 6,000, because you want to see the color of the car when you're out there at night. So the lower that number gets, or even if you get too high, if you get into the 8,000s and it's blue, it just starts being more difficult to distinguish between, this orange and this orange, or this pink and this pink, and really see that clearly.
It's not easy. And it's the hardest thing too, is trying to find the balance, For me personally, I love a nice incandescent glow, the yellow, but once you start getting into the 8,000s, you're talking about like maximum security prison level, suck the life out of you.
we're not doing that, right?
No.
That's not.
That's not an objective.
So it sounds like 4 fits within that level Carl was talking about for the recommended.
Any other questions or things that need to be changed from that section? No. Okay, we can move on to 6, dusk to dawn, or it shows the 7 there, security and floodlights. And there were a number of changes, including the addition of the motion activated, which was not currently a requirement.
Little confused by must be full cutoff fixtures. As I understood it, floodlights are by definition not full cutoff fixtures.
Yeah, that's a problem. What that needs to say is that they could be cutoff fixtures, which is, if you remember from this graphic, a cutoff fixture allows that light, instead of being totally flush with the ground, it can be angled, or it could have a portion of the glass coming down below the housing of the fixture. So if you had a floodlight, if this is the light at the bottom, you could either angle it a little bit to make it a partial cutoff, or it could have a bulb coming down just a little bit past that bottom housing. So that needs to be updated.
And we're going to look at that too, because another thing that you might typically have is you might have a full cutoff fixture right here. It's typically a parking lot light, and somebody just goes, whoop, angle it. All of a sudden you got situation. So this is a very hard area for us to regulate here. So we'll want to go back and look at it and add some flexibility for us as well.
Any questions about that? So the next section, street lighting, would be section 7. And a lot of this is crossed out because we have we've switched over to using tables for things like the height limit, and that all of that's been moved out. Section 7 and 8, parking and loading, all of that has been moved into the tables now, so those are being deleted. We can move on to section 11, outdoor sports fields, and I'll update all these numbers. I know we're out of sorts here.
Should be A and B, right?
Yes, all that needs to be updated. A, B. Questions about outdoor sports fields? Okay, we can move on to electronic message displays, this whole section.
One question on
Oh.
section C,
Okay.
just a grammar police here.
Oh, yes.
Hours of operation shall coincide with the use of the field. Only areas which are open for use or undergoing maintenance shall be lit outside of those hours, maybe? It's a little confusing.
I thought it was intended for during those hours.
What I'm seeing is you obviously need to have it, hours of
Yeah.
operation have to coincide with active use. But if you need to maintain it outside of those hours, which is what I think the second sentence said.
Yeah, it's,
No,
Or
comment was
undergoing
wrong.
maintenance.
I'm rereading it. You're fine.
oh, okay.
Sorry.
All right, electronic message displays, this whole section is new.
So I will say, from a code enforcement perspective, the biggest complaints we get are, if you want to draw your attention to the brightness section. So nits is the type of measurement there. If you've ever gone to the airport for a very early flight in the morning and driven down Hendersonville Road, you will notice that you'll see a lot of bright red light emanating typically. That's what I recall. It's always the reds for me that are the brightest in those early hours.
Is the nit brightness, I'm sorry, I just have no context for that, 20 nits or 1,000 nits. Did we look at other counties or other cities?
Yeah, that's a standard benchmark, right, Shannon?
Mhm.
Looked at other, some of it's self-policing amongst the industry itself, but obviously you can imagine during the daytime, you're going to go up significantly to compete with the sunlight. So.
We did look at recommendations for minimizing glare for nighttime drivers as part of this, and that's part of where those limits for the 20 nits came from.
Does it result in something that might be brighter than a billboard?
So all these have controls literally on the side, and they self-adjust day, night, but you can crank it. It's really just simply turning it down or turning it up.
Hard to regulate that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Time and temperature display. You can only change it once every 12 hours.
It's not meant to address
That
time.
this is meant to prevent TV style displays of animation, essentially. We're not going to regulate something like that, or the weather update. Now, if they have like a dancing cloud that's like running across the screen and the neighbors are complaining, that's I would argue that's maybe not a weather update. But
What we could do is go under exemptions. We could put in a very basic sentence about we're not attempting to regulate the display of time or temperature or the degrees of the weather. But that way, to Shannon's point, it's really the animated signs that are just full blown TV displays where we're going with this section. Correct?
but we can add a sentence to clarify that.
Does this also apply to, and I'm probably imagining this, some of the big billboards that are effectively electronic message displays? I don't know that any of them are animated. so
No,
much.
so the billboards is a whole other ball of wax, and this is not really meant to address that. But what the billboards typically do is they static, but they rotate through a slide deck.
Right.
So we're gonna go Harris Cherokee Casino, John's Law Firm, Nancy's message about schools. You get the picture.
We don't have a billboard yet.
You're
Yeah.
close.
And then,
You're close.
All right. Do we want to move on to backlit signs? This is also a brand new section. And just to clarify, we are only regulating the lit portion of the sign. So you could have pretty much a sign of any size. We are only going to be regulating the square footage of the lit portion of it.
Need to change that whole graphic. It says 12 square feet. Up above and B, it says 15.
Oh,
Yeah.
good
Good
catch.
catch. Good catch.
So was it 12 or 15? 15.
Yeah, it's 15.
Can that be just like the name of the company that the lights coming out the back or the whole?
Two sun faces, usually lights in the middle.
Gotcha.
So pretty typical. I always see it on the ethos on above a shopping center or out of the road.
It could also be individual letters that are lit in a grouping.
Would that be covered by that? If you had individual letters that were contained individually, they might be more than 15, I'm being pedantic, more than 15 square feet, but they're.
So typically those are not going to be on a pole. You'll usually see those mounted to a structure. And that's where we're looking at
Like
that
50
50
square
square feet kind of, however they
You
spread
gotta
those
block it
across.
out or else, so target, you're not gonna measure each, so you're just gonna block it out.
I've got to think about that.
Otherwise, you got to do calculus again.
Because I'm thinking of signs that you may have changeable.
Change copy.
Yes.
Yeah, we can,
Like a church,
I think what we'll do is we'll go back and have a different graphic.
I think that
For
might
the
be
storefront.
Yeah.
more restrictive than the cities.
Yeah, so we'll go back and check that as well. We certainly don't wanna open ourselves up to more.
need to be able to advertise the barbecue supper.
That's right.
Particularly if it's good barbecue.
Indeed.
They get a bigger sign if it's
Right.
good.
Maybe that could be an example as another one, because those are typically on the ground, right? Or on the, I guess they're both. They're kind of on the pole. Some of them are on like just something that sits on the ground and can be lit up. Just another way.
of the city.
Yes, and we don't have a sign ordinance. We have basically an off-site sign ordinance, but we don't have on-site sign ordinance. And I don't see us going down that road either. So we're just really trying to stick to the lighting.
Any other questions about that section? We can move on to administration and enforcement.
Just moving it to a table again, right?
Well, no, this exterior lighting designs table, this is where we are trying to create some flexibility for smaller scale developers or commercial or industrial projects that have chosen to have less lighting. So photometric plans, hiring a lighting engineer and all that is very expensive. As you get smaller, it becomes more of a burden and can, bring up costs of development. So we are experimenting in this table with trying to identify some types of lighting that we know by looking at existing photometric plans that they do not, it's very hard for them to exceed our light limits because of the type of lighting, because of the distance between those lights. Staff can look at those plans and know with fair certainty that they are not going to exceed our limits. And so this table provides some standards saying if you choose to do lighting on your project and you keep your lighting within the limits of one of these types that are listed on the table, we will not require you to do a photometric plan. So that's a cost that they would not have to take on. So it gives them some options for being able to do lighting at a smaller scale without having to provide that document to us.
And here's where we learned what's not working. And this is a benefit to smaller businesses. So Carl, if you just have a small camera shop and you're going to put a wall pack up and it's cut off and you're going to pass go, we're not going to hold you to the higher restrictions. So this is the area I think that staff has learned over the years, what's not working and what needs to be changed.
Would like to suggest, and this is changing what already exists, licensed engineer to licensed professional, because architects, landscape architects, sometimes you don't think of them as an engineer, but they are licensed professionals.
Can you say again what the terminology was?
You're just a licensed professional.
Okay.
We can do that.
Could it be licensed and qualified?
We can do that as well.
And good looking.
Sure. Please call Jay. That's what it'll say in the ordinance there. The only reason I say qualified is you could have a license, which wouldn't necessarily
Yeah. It needs
relate
to be
to the,
relevant.
yeah.
I just don't want to see John Noor starting to do lighting plans.
No, John Noor doesn't want to do that either.
Okay.
Why I'm
Can we,
asking that you put that in there.
we need to include that specifically.
So are there any questions about any of the types of uses or the standards that we are proposing?
I think it was proposed to separate street
Oh.
light from parking lot pole light here. Is that right?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Just looking at that, the combined
Oh,
height
look right here.
for street light.
Oh, to
and
separate
parking lot
those.
pole. Mhm.
Good catch. That's consistent with what we talked about before.
Also, section 2 says licensed engineers.
Yes, Greg grabbed that already. Shannon and I were just looking at that.
Mhm.
That's good feedback, y'all.
So this table is intended to say these are not mutually exclusive conditions, which would be exempt, any of these, and or any combination. But down at the bottom, it says up to 10 total lights in development.
So it would be, for instance, you come in and you want to do just a backlit sign, we would look at that. But if you wanted to do a mix, let's say you wanted to have some backlit signs, some wall pack, street lights, parking lot pole, That's where it becomes harder for staff to be able to look at it and tell whether or not you're meeting the standard. So if you're going to come in and you're going to do a complicated mix of all different types of lighting, but you still want to try to not have to do a photometric plan because it is a smaller scale, we would look at that last line, any mix of lighting types above. So if you, if you have 10 lights or less, and it meets those other requirements, we can do it as a mix.
Okay.
But if it gets more complicated than that, we really do need a photometric
No,
plan.
that's fine. Makes sense.
All right. Any other comments on that section? We've got some little changes here or there in what's currently the crossed out section 3, 4, 5. If you want to look through those, actually to the pretty much to the end of the ordinance, are there any questions about all of those other sections?
I had a question about the lighting affidavit. So that's essentially, and as opposed to a photometric plan, this can be another option. What are we looking for in the lighting affidavit?
Yeah.
And, are we, let's start there.
So the lighting affidavit, we allow, if you are only doing a backlit sign, instead of having to submit a full photometric plan for just a backlit sign, which we know those do not have a very big spread of light. So their impact is typically quite small compared to light that shines out. You can do a lighting affidavit, and there's a form that we provide to you when you apply for your permits. And in order to get your permit closed out at the end, you have to turn that form back into us. It needs to be signed by either your lighting contractor or your lighting engineer. And what they have to do is they have to take a light meter out to the site at night to the closest property line to that sign or to that light, and give us a right in the meter reading attest with their signed, sealed name that they have done that meter reading. So we don't allow it in general. It has to be for really low intensity lights. If you're doing one backlit light, if you've got one wall pack and it's 1,000,000 miles away from the property line, you don't have any other lights on the property, we would allow it in that kind of situation. But for anything more than that, you would have to do a photometric plan. That's what the current requirements are.
And yeah, so it's been there for a while now. I do think what Shannon has put together here with this table will help a lot with us not having to rely on that. But this has been something that staff has been found to be very helpful with. Again, Carl's just got his camera shop and not have to spend a ton of money on for one little
business because everything's phones.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
everything. Right?
That's everything. Yep.
Can you review one more time the Kelvin rating chart? And that's what we decided on is as it is written on the version 2 chart.
So
Same as version 1 chart.
actually don't have a copy of version 1. What is a typo in there is it still says 5,000 for the vehicular canopy. That needs to be 4K. And then staff is still looking at the numbers for the performance and sports field. But what was your question about it?
So it's still 4,000 degrees for the zoning with NSCS, EMP, CR, and PS.
You all had talked about changing it to just be 3 across the board. I don't think that we had come to a consensus on that, though. Do we want to revisit that?
And I'm comfortable with the 3, but I don't think we came to a final decision on it.
I'm comfortable with the 3 as well. That's why I was wondering about why the 4 was still there for the zoning NSCS, EMP, CRPS. That was just my question.
So we would get rid of the separation of the districts and it just be all lights except those listed below are 3 Kelvin. Does that
Yep.
work for everybody? Okay.
And then it goes to 4 for the canopies, and you're going to be bringing back the sports field stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
You take another question?
Say again?
You taking other questions?
We're taking all the questions.
Back on the first page. Guess we need our legal expert here. It says that all pre-existing vehicular canopies shall conform to the provisions within 10 years. I didn't think we were going the route of an amortization or something, and can it specifically take a particular use and apply it there and not to other uses?
Did this get added?
This was a request by your board last meeting to have amortization be the way to go with our vehicular canopies that are non-compliant. We had talked about the dusk to dawn security lights are the only time that I'm aware of that the county's ever done an amortization to bring things into compliance, and we do not have any other things that have used that. It does require that those businesses, remove the non-compliance and then have to bring that site up with brand new fixtures if they choose to continue with lighting.
I think we also talked a little bit about how frequently that typically happens with the gas stations, et cetera, and that they tend to be changing their skins within that 10-year period, I think is what my memory is telling me.
If
My
I
last
could
name.
make a suggestion to the board, I would suggest someone having gone through amortization of numerous things. It is not an easy process to do. I would suggest removing that for now, seeing how the rest of these changes go, and then we could readdress that maybe at a later time, given the fact that we've got a slew of other text amendments coming right behind here, but amortization is a difficult thing to do. To Shannon's point, that is the only reason we were successful with amortization with the dusk to dawn is because Duke worked with us and they were proactive to get out there and replace all the fixtures. This puts a huge burden on staff to have to administratively keep track of this. And if you can imagine 30, 40 different sites this might apply to, you can see how I just don't want us to fail right out of the gates.
So I think I may have been the origin story on the amortization, and we may just have different opinions on it. I like it because I think it brings those non-conforming uses into conformance over a reasonable period of time. And I think we are talking about maybe 30 to 50 type events versus like 3,000. So I do think there's a different level of review that comes with that. And by putting it in here now, I think it's going to force us to have the conversation. If it's not in there, no one's going to talk about coming into conformity ever. And I don't see where we'd come back to say, okay, well, let's put the 10 years in there now. If 10 years is not reasonable, I think we're going to hear complaints about it. And then we could always go back and remove the 10-year requirement versus leaving it out. So I would like to see it because I think the gas station glare light issues seem to be the ones that a lot of people just hate how bright it is. So getting that conformity would be an objective, but that's my take.
Well, and I think the paragraph before that addresses upgrades or whatever that, whenever that is done, then you bring it into conformance. I have a problem with taking something that's currently conforming and then saying in 10 years it's not going to be conforming.
Would you all like to maybe when we bring back some of these changes, reinitiate this conversation and have staff study this a little
We
bit
can do it
more?
Arm wrestling.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Oats work,
Yeah.
but
I would like to see more discussion on
Can I ask
this.
a question about the way I'm reading this? Is this saying that I own a gas station that 10 years from the time the county commissioner approved whatever we said to them, you would forcibly make me change all my lights?
Well, see, that's the thing about code enforcement. Well, first of all, you could have a different set of commissioners in 10 years that might have a different opinion. Secondly, this puts all the burden on staff to basically, if we get to the 10 years and we still have people that are not in compliance, then we're sending out notices of violation. And then we have to go through.
So that is what that's saying.
Mhm.
For those reasons and also reasons of potential hardship to business owners, I mean, I want to see less light. I think that's part of the objective here. I would really like to continue this discussion a little more depth and maybe have the staff do a deeper dive and report back to us.
Huge asterisk in front of that.
Well, and I would like the legal pros and cons when we get to that discussion.
Yeah, we need to pour through the land use law book, look at some case law, look at some other benchmark counties in particular, and we'll come back to you.
Thank you.
Other questions that haven't gotten answered for any of the sections? We've got a lot of stuff we need to bring back with a final version for you to look at anyways, so we've got lots of time to work on this.
And landscaping, will fences be used to prevent the light from escaping a lot?
Landscaping what?
Or fences?
Yeah, so he's basically saying screens. There's also, one of the things that we haven't really talked about, that's the, you could have a fully compliant site with outdoor lighting, and you could have a adjacent neighborhood that's downslope, have all the light in the world. So allowing staff to have enough flexibility to employ tools like side shields, fencing, screening, landscaping, whatever, gives us the ability to sort of customize compliance where we need to.
Are you asking that in terms of being able to allow uplighting or where you're? Okay,
Block the light.
gotcha. Okay.
We just want to know if Jay's going into the fence business next.
And it is one of the reasons that we have like a buffer requirement if you've got like a commercial business next to our residence.
You should think of that word.
Oh, it's on the agenda.
Good.
All right.
Hey Shannon, sorry. I don't know where we landed with the conversation around vehicular canopies being 20 versus 30-foot candles. Maybe you could include that in your reviewing of recommendations too, because I feel like that all kind of fits together.
Okay, the illuminance of 30-foot candles right
Yeah,
at the
versus
top there.
Bringing it down to 20.
Okay.
And
All
we
right.
should come to a decision on that here, and I didn't note it, so I didn't think we did.
I don't think we did.
We can bring that back. I'll never forget, having been the planner for a local grocery store for numerous sites, this always comes up. I remember taking a 10-page staff report to city council, and there were some, anyway, the grocery store applicant was seeking a 30-foot candle versus I think the standard at the city was 20. So we can definitely look at that as well.
All right, we will bring back a new copy with all of the edits at the next meeting.
This was really great work. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
All right, so we are finished with our text amendment discussion. Is there anything else we need to mention before we adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. It was a great meeting. Thank you.